So what was really wrong with Mr. Kierkegaard? Why is he so difficult to understand? And has this difficulty something to do with him or myself, the reader? In his work Philosophical Fragments from 1844, the reader tends to get frustrated while reading this work. They start to think perhaps this has something to do with Mr. Kierkegaard being weird or me being unaware of what is really there to be said. And this situation might occur while reading other works of him as well. In reading Mr. Kierkegaard, you look yourself in the mirror, as when you read the Bible, in which he would say, because in reading so, you, the reader, gets troubled by existential crises and doings where the truth is definitely not how it is, if you, the reader yourself, are not reacting on it as this truth were not for you. Therefore, and of course there can be many reasons for you to throw Mr. Kierkegaard's works away, or thinking he might be a little weird. But from experience, I must say that the reason most people do so and feel frustrated reading Mr. Kierkegaard, especially this work, is because he wants you to think for yourself and is not always handing you all the answers. And you might feel even more frustrated now at me because I'm the one telling you this directly in your face. But Kierkegaard is not handing out any sketches of how to live and of how to exist. He wants you to ask yourself and for you to find your own answers within yourself. So sadly, therefore, people might feel frustrated reading Mr. Kierkegaard because they're not used to think for themselves. They're used to just do whatever other people are doing and to say whatever other people are saying or to wear what other people are wearing, and so on, so on. So when they're in their life not provided with the answers and they have to strip themselves naked within themselves and try and understand, okay, what is hidden in my mind, what is hidden in my heart, and what do I want to do, what is the truth for me? They feel frustrated because there is no truth. They don't know what to do. When they look for themselves, they can't find themselves because they were someone else and were doing something else than who they really are their entire life. And when the answers is not there for them to find, they find sadly nothing and they get frustrated. But I must say now that I seem like a bully to you, that of course I think it's a troubling saying, because I mean we cannot all wear something else. We cannot all have our own color of our own doings, of our own saying. I mean, there's not that diversity in the world. It's very, if you look at it in that way, it's very claustrophobic. You could say, if there is an internal truth out there, you know, all the truths, where are they? Because it's very claustrophobic. I mean, how is there even room for people to be themselves? Is also a question to be answered. But I will leave it here for now. Therefore, this work can be understood in many ways, not only of a contradiction mirror that are questioning the reader's belief, but also of an impression mirror where you put yourself in the writing's matter of your own time, and a expression mirror where you have to think further on your own and to show an understanding in the world of doings. Because if you understand, you move forward, further and forward. Only people that don't understand are stuck in time and seek to move forward by going backwards. If you're focusing on Kierkegaard's writings in its totality, and not only his authorship as being a writing therapy exercise, where the patient is Kierkegaard himself that gets to an understanding and a totality of himself and his being, the more clearness he gets over his thoughts, his inner thoughts, by writing everything down. This work might feel like Kierkegaard the most, simply because this work might be the first in which his real self is shining through his synonyms, characters, and his way of being a genius. Geniuses might have a lot in common, and they all suffer, I know, but every genius suffers in their own time of being. Kierkegaard is the one writing this work, he is the one suffering, or maybe he's just a little frustrated, or maybe this work is his way of being funny. And if not all of this, we will go back and see this mirror of ourselves in reading his work. Because he pokes you a lot in this work and are not holding back for you to get frustrated, and therefore for you to seek your own answers within yourself. Because in his search of the human relation to knowledge, he might talk about a condition that we all feel as humans for us to exist. But if he's not, this condition might only be for the genius. But if you're a genius out there in watching this, or if you have already read this work and don't think this is the condition of being a genius because you're one yourself, this condition might only be for Mr. Kierkegaard. In saying so, some scholars might say, why read Kierkegaard if all he wants is for you to read yourself, you could say. Well, if you were a genius and able to read yourself, then why would you ask? And why are you asking in relation to Kierkegaard? Thanks to Kierkegaard, you now have something to ask. Because of him, you started to think for yourself and to ask questions. So let's start at the very beginning of this work, and therefore his choosing of a synonym name for this work, which is Johannes Climacus. Climax in Greek means staircase or ladder, and rhetorical speaking refers to a continuous build-up. In movies, a climax as the final battle might placed near the end as a final build-up high, but in Mr. Kierkegaard's work I don't necessarily find reason for this build-up final high, only continuous build-up, even near the end. So does this build-up even show in this work, or was the whole work itself as a whole a build-up to the next work, which for his entire authorship is the concept of anxiety, which every scholar would say is the most difficult work to understand of Mr. Kierkegaard. If you look at the name in its whole, it could be referring to the monk that lived alone for 40 years in a cave and became a destination for ascetic people seeking advice. He got his name because of a work of him which this continuous build-up. 30 chapters, each one step on this ladder for the ascetic man of what not to do and what to do as coming closer to God. This work was in collation or inspired by Jacob's ladder and was called in Greek Climax to Paradisu, in Latin Scala Paradisi, and in English the Paradise Ladder or the Ladder to Paradise. I sadly haven't read this work myself, so what relation is Kierkegaard referring to, I can't be sure, but this is a good way to start that questioning. But in Kierkegaard's work, Johannes Climacus, or the Omnibus Dubitandum Est, he talks a little about this by connecting the name with Scala Paradisi, and even more, might connect this name with himself. So if you have now paused the video and therefore to take a look at this other work of Mr. Kierkegaard, Johannes Climacus, or the Omnibus Dubitandum Est, there is actually a drawing in there, so if you don't want to read the whole work now, I can understand this, or if you never ever want to read it, that's alright, but at least look at this drawing, because there's a beautiful drawing in there that give you a great picture in your mind of how this step by step actually would look for Mr. Kierkegaard. If you think of a ladder, you might think you take one step by step and going upwards, but in this drawing of Mr. Kierkegaard, in this other work, it actually looks, I would say, like a pencil, like that, and then it goes like this. A circle that continues going upwards, so you walk slowly, and therefore you, in a circle, you walk higher and higher up to this whole truth that he wants to provide for you. And Kierkegaard would also say that if you want to bring people up, you have to start at their level. And there's a very beautiful way of saying this also, that, I mean, if he's, of course he's a genius, and if he just did his whole mind out there on you, you would not really grasp anything or understand anything, also because he has his education upon him as well. So you would very much say, if he started off at the top, say, what the hell is this? I don't even understand. So to bring people up, you have to understand the position they're in, and therefore take their hand and step by step, walking towards to this overall truth that you want to provide. You know, the same is if you have someone you run with, or you are a runner and you can run 50 kilometers, and you have someone you want to that wants to run with you and want to hit this goal of 50 kilometers as well. I bet you don't start at running 50 kilometers. You look at the person that you want to build up and you want to bring there, and you say, okay, maybe we should start just walking 3 kilometers, and then step by step we can work towards that goal. And that is the same exact thing that's going on here, just in the mind of thinking. I think that I have put a statement in there for you that Johannes Climacus, the synonym name that he uses for some of his works, might be the closest to the real Mr. Kierkegaard, but you should also look at other works as signals unto that, I think it's called in English, where he uses the synonym anti-Climacus. But I don't necessarily think there is a real difference there between of this being the real Mr. Kierkegaard or not. But definitely, if you want to take this statement into the fullest version, you cannot really go across. You have to read his whole authorship. So then there is a lot to grasp. But at least for now, I think it will be reasonable for people that start reading Mr. Kierkegaard that if they feel frustrated reading works of him with this synonym of Climacus, or is it anti-Johannes Climacus or is it not, doesn't matter, but when this name is used, you should expect to see more of the real Mr. Kierkegaard. Next in the work, he tells you the groundwork, his first step on the ladder, thought in having a final step on the ladder overview. At least I would think so. Kierkegaard is searching for the human relation to truth and says, can there be giving a historical starting point for a internal consciousness? And since this step on the ladder might be a final one, as an overview, I'm going to provide a little of that for you, if you have not read this work. That there is overall 2 kinds of truth. The Socratic truth after the philosopher Socrates that has always been here and therefore everyone has access to, and a Christian truth after God, the Son of God, Jesus Christ, a truth that has not always been here and not everyone has access to. So, when Johannes Climacus is saying, can there be given a historical starting point for a internal consciousness, he is referring to Christ, the Son of God that came into this world breaking with the human truth that has always been here by providing a new internal truth that before this coming into this world from a historical starting point was never here. Afterwards he continues by saying, how can this interest more than being historical? Can you build an internal truth on a historical truth? Before answering this, you must, you the reader, decide if Johannes Climacus is a Christian or not. But he's not, you will say, because this is what the internet says, and because in another work of him he talks through a anti-Climacus and so on. Well, but maybe not. You can decide for yourself and find out for yourself by reading it. And let's now continue to his motto of this work, which is from Shakespeare, his comedy Twelfth Night, or What You Will. And what more is there to say of this? Only one thing. It surely seems like Johannes Climacus is not a Christian. Or maybe he is really a Christian in trying to save your marriage with God. Now let's take a look at his first words, his preface forward, where Kierkegaard might be more free in expressing his own self before worldly guidelines in every form. But I don't think Kierkegaard would care for such guidelines anyways. It can be difficult to decide whether Johannes Climacus is a Christian or not, because there may be shared thoughts that go back and forth with each other, and even more difficult to decide, as I mentioned in the beginning, if this work and synonym name is the closest to Kierkegaard's real self, when he in this, his first words, his foreword, says having his own meaning of this and those matters doesn't matter at all. And he continues saying this, if someone assumed that I have a meaning, and so on, someone not having their own meaning, but only mine, and so on, my life can I joke around with, not someone else's, and then ends in beautiful writing matter. This part of his first words, which I really enjoy because of many reasons, One could be this we have already talked about as being the closest to the real Mr. Kierkegaard, which he might not like me for saying, would not agree, or maybe want to distract you from finding out, or maybe he means something completely else, but let's assume that he does not. So, he does not have a meaning, therefore this work is not the closest to the real Mr. Kierkegaard, because he's a genius and therefore only stays in the purest form of truth, has nothing to do with him. But I disagree. If he's a genius in future measuring of this concept of being a genius, having freely access to all the truth, him choosing to say it, and not for what it said, but for how it came to be said, is definitely his meaning, a part of his meaning. Not for what is said, but for choosing to say it and of how it came to be said. A stupid example could be, if I told you that you were ugly and you in fact are ugly, you might argue that that is just the truth. I mean, how can you hate me, right? I'm just being honest in the matter of the truth. That's not my opinion. Well, it's not, and then you would say, but your opinion is also your choice, because you chose to tell me this, that I'm ugly. Not only did you choose to tell me this, but also you choose to tell me something that makes me sad or angry, something I wouldn't like to hear. And that's definitely someone's meaning, even though it might be a truth. But Kierkegaard, in trying to save your marriage with God, is might doing this on purpose to make you frustrated enough to actually go and do something good about it. What becomes difficult in relation to humans' relation to truth, if you're actually born ugly. This is just how it is. It can be difficult to go and do something about it if you do not take a leap or a jump and proceed anyways to go forward in faith, at least at the very start. So, if you're too scared to go talk with your crush because your rational mind might be against it, go do it anyways. Like me making this YouTube channel, oh no, people are not going to laugh and be mean to me, yet I proceeded to do it anyways, out of love in doing so. So you should never ever be scared to react on real love, even though your rational mind might be against it. You need to man up and do it anyways. Let's now talk about the moral of this work, which is written in the end of this work. You might find this a little weird that we are now already at the end, but I want this video to be the first step on your ladder in understanding this work, and therefore I will make more videos on this work in the future, because there's a lot more to be said. And also I want this video to be a continuous build-up as well, for your first step here on the ladder in understanding this work. What he says in the moral is this: the project goes without a doubt further than the Socratic way, which shows in every matter. If it's therefore more truth than the Socratic way is a different question, which cannot let itself decide here in this reading, because we stated a new organ, fate, and a new precondition, the consciousness of sin, a new decision, the moment, and a new teacher, God in time. He then continues a little bit and then says in the end, but to go further than Socrates, when you say almost the exact same as him, but not nearly as good as him, well, that's at least not Socratic. No, it's not. Those thoughts of becoming your true self and what it means to be a human in human relation to truth seems to be internal thoughts. So this project goes further than the Socratic way. If it's therefore more truth, will not be decided. Yes, this project goes further. The Socratic truth that has always been here and everyone has access to, but this project wants to move further from this. Therefore, the moment is really decisive, because God's Son, Jesus, came into existence and provided a new internal truth that before this decisive moment in time was not there. But your rational mind does not understand this. But that's alright, because God is what's different to your rational mind. We therefore need this new organ, faith. Without faith, where is God? Where is God seen in this humble-looking Jesus that came down to us from the highest step on the ladder in providing us the truth from the first step on the ladder to bring us up to the internal truth? But where is God? God became a human being provided the truth of God. This problem as a paradox appears in chapter 3, and the tragic would be if you did not even pay attention to God in time, because God became a human, like the rest of us. So how would you know that that is God? And even more tragic, if you understood this human to be God under the condition of being a human, then what would make this human a God? It simply doesn't make sense, and only with faith are you able to see God in man. But how do we even know that before this decisive moment in time of Jesus, the Son of God, providing us this new internal truth, that human being was not in truth, in a Christian manner, because of our consciousness of sin, that we fall from the hands of God, and in doing so, we lost the divine truth, which Jesus came to restore as a new teacher in time. So now we have a new teacher in time, and you might ask, what is the difference from this teacher God in time and the Socratic teacher? The Socratic teacher can be anyone. It can be your partner or your friend, and all you gotta do is simply asking a question and helping each other reaching a high level of truth. An example could be you and your friend going outside in your garden, and then looking up into the sky and start asking questions, what might be out there, and so on, so on. And in asking questions back and forth with each other, you guys will help each other hands in hands by understanding the truth, by understanding yourself, and to hands in hands walk steps on this ladder into truth. But God is the one providing you this truth, and therefore God does not need your help in asking questions to understand, because God already understands in providing you this truth, and also providing you this new organ of faith to understand it, because God is what is different to your rational mind. And you might say, okay, why would God do such a thing if God knows everything, and so on, so on? God is doing it simply out of love. And you might scream at me saying that does not make sense, it's too cheesy, but real love is irrational. I mean, have you ever not been in love yourself? When you are so, you might, oh, why the hell did I write a song to her? That's so embarrassing, but you did it because you were in love. So sadly we are now at the end of this video. Did Kierkegaard get closer to an understanding of what it means to be a human being? Yes, he did. A fragment closer. Did he do it by coming a fragment closer to an understanding of himself? Perhaps a question of human relation to truth, but also a lovable understanding of what this truth is, whether it's Socratic or a Christian truth. A truth of the human self. Two initiatives, true about the truth's present, is it here or not? Always has been or not. One truth about is present relation to being a human being, regardless of his condition of being present or not. The human relation and condition to truth as a way to understand yourself, what it means to exist as a human being, and what that means might only be answered by yourself, which does not have anything to do with understanding this work in its whole, right? But if this work by Mr. Kierkegaard, coming closer to himself, help you, the reader, coming closer to yourself, and then you telling others, by telling others, or for them coming closer to an understanding of themselves, and so on, so on. Then why read Mr. Kierkegaard if all he wants is for you to read yourself? And there we go. We are now at the end by being at the start of where we started this video.